Hello, so today I will be talking to you about the philosophers René Descartes and Friedrich Nietzsche. Some may say that these two have very different beliefs and they would be right, but they are also similar. Descartes, like Nietzsche, was focused on finding out the truth and discovering what was real and what was not. In order to cut out unnecessary work, Descartes exercised radical doubt in order to call into question all of his beliefs. In doing this, he didn't have to go through all of his beliefs and test each one individually. Rather, he put them through test to see which beliefs he could trust. For example, he said that because we dream, we cannot trust our senses. That sounds crazy, I know, but let me explain. Descartes says that because there is no way of truly knowing if we are awake or asleep, we cannot trust our senses. It is crazy to think that we cannot know if we are awake, but it makes sense. There are times where our dreams are so vivid and seem normal that when we wake up, we believe that we were actually at work or the grocery store and not sleeping. It is because we have dreams so vivid and normal seeming that we cannot be sure if we are asleep or awake. If we cannot be sure if we are awake, we cannot trust our senses. Another example would be how he called math and other universally held truths into question. Descartes says that if there is a God or someone powerful enough to create us and make universal laws, that they could intentionally put false information into our heads and feed us false information. After Descartes calls all of his beliefs into question, he comes to the conclusion that he cannot be certain about anything except that a thinking exists. This simply put means that he doesn't know who or what the thinking being is, but something exists, and it is thinking. From here begins to go into genealogy and attempts to trace the cause of all things back to its original cause, which he deems to be God. For there he concludes that God must be real and that we in our senses and common laws and truths must be real, for if there is a God, then he is a good God and would not put false information into our heads. Now, Nietzsche's views differ a bit from Descartes. Nietzsche believed that there were no universal laws and that there were only things that were true in perspective. Nietzsche also believed that our morals shaped who we are, and this is why he focused his work on morality and ethics. His famous work was The Critique of Morality. This was huge because no one had done this before. People were often basing their beliefs and morals off of religion. What Nietzsche was doing was attempting to know why we feel good things are good and bad things are bad. To do this, he had to look to a time before religion and to study people that were much different than what we consider human to be now. These people he looked to were called uncivilized, not because they were sporadic and couldn't organize, but because they weren't as intelligent and sophisticated as we are today. By looking at these people and studying how they interacted with each other before the times of religion, he was able to deduct when the origin of good started. Nietzsche broke down these people into two categories. There were the nobles and the herd. The nobles were big, strong, aggressive, confident, and brutal. Normally when those characteristics used, they aren't used for good people, but we'll come back to that. The herd was described as weak, not confident, soft, docile, peaceful, and generally the opposite of the nobles. So you may say that the herd was the origin of good, and you'd be wrong. You see, the nobles and the herd were animalistic and acted based off of instinct. So, the nobles considered themselves good because they could get what they wanted. They were able to because of their instincts and their natural disposition to aggression and large stature. Now, if the nobles were good, the herd was bad. This isn't because the nobles hated the herd or thought they were evil. In fact, the nobles didn't care about the herd at all. The herd was just prey to the nobles, nothing more and nothing less. The herd was considered bad because they weren't noble. Nobles were good because they could get what they wanted. So if you weren't good, you must be bad. Nietzsche used this to explain how the herd used religion to create the idea of a conscience. Because all the characteristics that people used to describe Jesus were all the characteristics used to describe the herd. This allowed the herd to say that they were good because they were Jesus-like and the nobles were bad because they were not. This allowed the herd to control the nobles because they could use their newly acquired consciences to make the nobles feel guilt about following their instinctual urges. Nietzsche, however, did not believe in God, and thus he rejected the idea of a higher plane or heaven. So he called for people to reject the idea of an afterlife and religion, but to re-evaluate the morals and ideals that came with religion. Descartes' genealogical research is important because, although it was not explicitly the aim of his research, it allowed some form of proof or reassurance that God existed, and that life had meaning. Many people seek love, riches, families, and many more things, but at the core of these things is the common desire of meaning. We as people actively seek meaning to reassure us that we matter. As people, we want to know that what we do means something and has an impact on the world. Naturally, the reassurance that Descartes brought to the existence of God gave people ease and hope. Alternatively, the work that Nietzsche did added to the narrative that God does not exist. Instead, he urged people to seek what really matters in life, not because the Bible says so or because the priests tell you to, but because it actually matters to you. He told people to seize the day because there is no afterlife. This also opened up the possibility of being an atheist to people, because Nietzsche blatantly said that there was no God. People could live their lives free of religious guilt and free to live life as they pleased without constant threat of hell and damnation. Both Descartes and Nietzsche utilized genealogy to conduct their research, but Descartes believed in God and was searching for the truth and what he could trust, and Nietzsche did not believe in God and searched for a new meaning of life and new morals separate of religion.